This is episode 14 of the Remix Your World podcast with Jaytech. Welcome to Remix Your World. I'm Alyson, global DJ and music producer turned life remixer and personal growth coach. In each episode, we bring you real talk, inspiring stories, and heartfelt conversations of personal transformation to help you uplift and amplify your life. This is the Remix Your World podcast. Australian DJ producer Jaytech has been perfecting his craft for most of his life. James Kazar, better known as Jaytech or Jimbo to his friends, was 16 when he first experienced electronic music at a university rave party in Canberra, his hometown. Immediately inspired by what he heard, Jaytech began crafting music using a simple computer setup and his parents' hi-fi speakers. His first worldwide vinyl release, Music 101, was played by DJs around the world and ultimately BBC's Radio 1. Today, roughly 15 years later, Jaytech continues to inspire fans and contemporaries alike. Currently working on his fourth artist album, Jaytech is traveling the USA to seek inspiration and further develop his signature sound, while continuing to DJ in select cities, allowing him to connect with his fans. Jaytech's musical empire reaches far beyond his accolades as a DJ and artist. Positronic, Jaytech's first label and home to his third artist album, Awakening, is a platform to promote up-and-coming artists and break them into the scene. Each month, tens of thousands of fans around the world listen to Jaytech's long-standing radio show and podcast, one of the first ever mix show podcast of its kind, and his new Studio Talk podcast is a platform where Jaytech interviews his contemporaries in the online music scene. As he continues to expand his music empire, Jaytech helps producers break new ground with their music through Red Planet, his online mixing and mastering service. With a new label in the works, Jaytech will also soon be taking the electronic music world by storm once again, as he continues to inspire the world through trance and progressive house. Over the course of his career, Jaytech has appeared at clubs and festivals in North and South America, Asia, Europe, and his homeland, Australia. His big break came in 2006 when Tiesto asked Jaytech to appear on the iconic In Search of Sunrise mix compilation series. Shortly thereafter, Jaytech was invited to play alongside British trance legends Above and Beyond at the Sunburn Festival in Goa, India. After making an impression on the Anjunabeats team, he was then invited to London to work in the Anjunabeats headquarters as a studio engineer. With the release of his critically acclaimed debut album, Everything Is Okay, Jaytech toured with Above and Beyond around the globe, appearing at every festival touchpoint imaginable. Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas, Tomorrowland in Belgium, Electric Zoo in New York, and as well as the Future Music Festival in Australia. His mix work has earned him 2 #1 places on the iTunes US Dance Album chart with his Anjuna Deep 02 and Anjuna 3 compilations, the latter of which he debuted during his live set at Trance Around the World 350, streamed live to a listen-in audience of 30 million from the Hollywood Palladium. His smash hit trance collaboration Code Red with Finnish duo Super 8 and Tab retained the #1 single on Beatport Trance for 2 weeks as he toured off the back of the release with the duo. His second artist album, Multiverse, is a time-honored Anjunabeats favorite. Jaytech is an international icon for progressive house music worldwide, but his best is yet to come. With his new album and subsequent tour in the works, as well as some exciting and innovative music on the horizon, Jaytech shows no signs of slowing down on his relentless dedication to his craft.
Yo, check this out.
What's up, world? It's episode 14 of the Remix Your World podcast with me, Alyson, and today I am talking to Jaytech. I will be honest, I totally got a little nervous. I did. When he got on the Skype, I actually got really nervous, but that's okay. You know, he inspires me. He's an amazing producer, and if there comes a point when I don't get a little nervous, giddy, or flustered when someone I find inspiring talks to me, you can all bitch slap me, okay? All right, great. We sat down for about an hour and talked about life, about music, about production, about what he's up to, Positronic, his label, some secret thing that he's working on that he can't share. Damn it. But we'll know soon. So without further ado, let's just jump right into my conversation with Jaytech.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Oh yeah!
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's so weird to hear your voice, but cool at the same time because I've listened to it so many times on your podcast.
Amazing.
Well, it's good. I'm so grateful, that you are here. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I'm just grateful that you said yes, so I don't know if you know so much about me and what it is that I do, but I'll just give you a little bit of a backstory. I've been a touring DJ and all of that for a very long time, for 25 years, primarily in the gay circuit world. And I just got to a point where I was like, this is not working. I'm burnt out. And I went through a really dark space and had to go and really take care of myself, and get off the road. And in that healing, I was aware of other people's healings. And that made me become a coach. And now I coach artists and DJs. And I'm just trying to create a bigger conversation around what it's like to have more balance in the world of electronica and being on the road. So that's what Remix Your World is really about. And you've always been really positive, and I love listening to your music, and I love the things that you've shared. So when you shared that post about it not being easy, I was just like, you know what, let me just ask him. So I'm really grateful that you said yes. So thank you so much.
Of course. And I think we're probably kindred spirits in that sense, in that, I think balance is such an important thing to me, in this day and age. It's more important to me than I think most of the attributes and values that people probably think that DJs are going for. I think especially sort of in the last 10 years, it's changed. But at the beginning, it was like, I think there was this assumption that all DJs and record producers are making lots of money, making astronomical amounts of money and being famous and living this rock star lifestyle. And that is true for some people, but I think what I love lately is that the creativity is returning to the scene, and the scene itself is being very much put back in the hands of the creators and the creative people, and it's becoming this much more manageable thing. And what we need more than ever is a middle class for electronic music and for music creation. Just like anything else in the world, just like so many of these systems in the world that have become either you're in this inner circle and everything is bestowed upon you, and and your life is just like a total, everything is taken care of, or you're in the trenches slumming it and everything is a total pain in the butt. So anything that we can do to make that more equalized and more balanced, I think is a great thing.
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah, I agree. So you fell in love with music pretty early, from what I'd read, like 16. You went to a festival and that was it.
Yeah. So I was always a music guy, and I really think to this day, it's all thanks to these kind of positive belief systems that my mother and my aunt sort of instilled in me when I was young. They sort of started teaching me piano when I was like 4 years old or something, like really, really young, very basic stuff to begin with, obviously. But they always said, like, you're really good at this. You're gonna go places with this. This is what you're gonna do. You have this special thing. And I think just people always telling me that is what made me ultimately go and do it. And, as an Australian, I'm living in this very sort of, now I realize, quite isolated bubble of the world. But back then I was like, I'm going to take over the world with this music, with no concept of how big the world is. But I set out to do it. And it sort of worked. Like, I never became like the world's #1 DJ or anything, but I did manage to have an impact that sort of echoed around the world. And I really think it's thanks to these positive belief systems. And so, when I was 16, I was already sort of planning to do like a life of music. But when it was that age that I realized that it wasn't going to be, this more traditional musical career that most people think of, but it was going to be this new wave of electronic music that didn't make sense to anybody back then, but has now taken the world by storm and is one of, in some parts of the world, it's like this, like say like in the Netherlands, it's become this like huge part of their economy, and and it's this industry that has seeped its way into every corner of life in this day and age.
Yeah, I remember I was young too. At 16, I touched my first turntable, and that was it. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm screwed. This is what I'm doing. I went
Yeah.
hardcore, and that was it. And I remember, I mean, I fell in love with house music, but way back in like, with like Black Box, back in the early 90s. And so it's just like, okay, yeah, I was the same kind of way. I went strong for it. My next question, though, I was going to ask you, were your parents supportive, but you just kind of answered that. So that's good to hear. When you shared with them, this is what I want to do, aside from them being a positive role models for you in positivity, were they like, yeah, go for it, do it?
Yeah, they very much were. They definitely had no idea where it was going. And they sort of cut a deal with me, which was like, please just focus on your studies and like get through school, while you do this, don't throw, because by the end of sort of high school, I was a little bit checked out of school because I was so ready to do this. And so I was like, Mom, Dad, like I'm really excited about this. And they were like, that's great. And we totally support it. Just make sure, like we really want you to just, see this whole school thing through to the end. And I'm really glad that they instilled that in me, because I think it was important to sort of get to the finish line with that, even though I was so ready to start doing this music stuff. And I, like years later, I was reading about Maddie, the French producer, who's one of my big inspirations because of how much he's sort of pushing the envelope. And he quit school. Like he quit high school to do this. Like he was super young, and he was like, nope, like this is what I want to do. And it paid off for him, and I'm sure there are probably lots of stories of people who have done that same thing and it hasn't. But I think it really goes to show that sometimes you just know what you want to do, and you know that you have something to share with the world, and there's no time to waste,
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I quit school.
Yeah.
I did. And my mom they were supportive. Their whole thing was like, you have to at least get your GAD.
Yeah.
If you're not going to go to college, whatever, but they were, so I get it. I was one of those people too. And it worked out. It did work out. So that is good.
And I did go to college for a very short amount of time. And the main reason was because in school, we were always instilled with this idea of like, you have to go to a university next year and you have to decide what it's going to be now. And, so whereas some people took like a year off or whatever, like I went straight into this Bachelor of Music, and I realized pretty soon that, I was not going to be able to, sit there for 4 years studying music further. I wanted to start making it happen now. So that didn't last very long because this career was already underway and I was already releasing music and starting to tour. And so, yeah. And so, I think in hindsight, like I wish somebody at the school had kind of told me, like, you don't necessarily have to do this, I think for creative industries, so much of it is done by feel and by DIY and trial and error that it, some of these sort of much more rigid systems don't always work so well, like they would, like they do for, say, doctors and lawyers and things where you definitely want to learn everything in the rule book before you start.
Right. Yeah. Because creatively, it's like we learn by trial and error. Or that, didn't sound good, or this sound totally. It's more about, you're not doing that in the doctor's office. You're not saying, oh, let me try and just maneuver this heart.
Yeah. And a great quote I heard once was that, people are coming to an artist to either see or hear their struggle against their own limitations. I can't remember who that quote was from. Maybe if you've got some show notes, I can look that up.
Yeah.
But it's so true. It's like, everything is kind of a mistake in the artistic world. It's creative chaos. And I think we as musicians we're bringing order to this chaos. We're reaching into this realm of complete possibility and bringing and refining it into something that people can connect with. And that's something that takes a lifetime to learn, and you never reach the finish line with learning that, it's always a learning process.
Yeah, and just keep going and keep going. So I know that, Tiesto discovered you. How was it that went down?
That was an In Search of Sunrise compilation. And that was, I think it was around like 2006. And that was a track that I was releasing on Rapid Response Recordings. Some good buddies of mine who definitely helped my career, Nick and Phil. And basically Tiesto wanted the track, but it wasn't trancey enough, and so they were like, "You need to turn this trance knob up to like 11, for this track because he wants it." And so I was like, "Oh my god!" And that's one of the hardest things to do for me is to make something full trance. I'm always mildly delving into the world of trance, but I never. It's but that was the first time I really did that, and it got picked up, and it got released on this CD that was put out all over the world, and very much. Changed the whole landscape for me,
Yeah. Do you remember what that was like, getting that call?
It was pretty exciting. Those guys were actually loads of fun to work with, the Rapid Response guys, because they were always calling me and amping me up about the whole thing. And I think getting a copy of the CD in the mail signed by Tiesto, saying thanks for your track, that was pretty special. And I still have that under the house somewhere at my parents' place.
And then the big boys, Anjuna, what was that like?
Yeah, so then I was releasing records myself on I had my first label, Red 7 Records, which I had a few releases with, and so I was putting out vinyl records, which still seems insane to me now. And that was an interesting fluctuating time for vinyl releases, and so our distributor kind of went bust, and all of the labels on that distributor sort of disappeared overnight, and so it was this time of flux of like, we had this service taking care of all the vinyl releases, the physical releases, and it was a question of like, did we still want to find some other way to make these records happen? And it was right at that point that Anjuna stepped in, and they had noticed one of the tracks that I was releasing on that label, and they said, well, we can see you're already releasing this yourself, but like we'd like to help you promote it. And it got used on, I think it was in like an Anjunabeats worldwide CD. And so we got talking, and then it was James Grant who sort of said, well, firstly they invited me to come and play in India at the Sunburn Festival in Goa. And so that was the first time I kind of opened for Above and Beyond. And then James Grant later asked me, would you like to come to the UK and kind of start a new life on the other side of the planet and, work in the Anjuna studios and all this kind of stuff. And so that's where it all began. And it was, that was when I was 22. So just over 10 years ago. And that kind of changed everything. Those 2 years in London, just being on tour all the time and living this crazy London life. It was great.
Yeah. And you're with, it's like the Holy Grail, if Anjuna says welcome, it's kind of like, you're like welcomed into the Holy Grail of electronic dance music. It's pretty amazing. That's how I found you. I found you through Anjuna Deep. I don't even know it was, it must have been 2010, 11 or something like that. That's kind of how I remember hearing you. And I was like, whoa, who is this guy? This guy's music is good. And I remember you had slowly, as I started to follow you, your music kept growing in terms of sonically, and it kept getting it's almost like you went from deep to beats, but like in a progression of your music as well. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. I remember feeling that. And so as now the stuff, like Aftershock, to me it feels like so much more ballsier than what I when I originally fell in love with the Jaytech sound. So it's been amazing to watch you grow as an artist from this side of it, and as somebody who's played your records. So I'm curious as how has that changed for you as a producer, and what kind of tools kind of came into your world that helped you kind of remix that in a sense of getting a bigger sound, going for bigger production value in terms of your sound and sonics?
Well, I think I've probably changed a lot as a person in the last 10 years. So like my first album and sort of all of the music from that, Everything Is Okay time on the when I first started working with Anjuna Deep, I was this kind of starry-eyed, early 20s kid who, and that was sort of the sound that really brought me into the world, was this like, I was this complete innocent, had no idea what the world was like, but yet I was setting out into it to sort of take it over. And it was just this magical time. And, it'll never be quite like that again, because life just sort of changes, and you become more adept at, you sort of figure yourself out as you go along. And so I think what's different now is that I think back then there was certainly a lot of struggle to make the music, struggling to sort of figure things out, figure myself out, like what is my sound, and especially, I think any young artist who has some initial success will tell you, like, sometimes it can be hard to figure out what you're going to say next. Once you've said something and it's resonated with the world, then everyone is sort of waiting for your next big message. What are you going to say next? So I think what's really changed now is that, I've made so much peace with this crazy artistic life, and it's something that's sort of come up again and again, lately, especially this year, is, hang on a second, like, is there any system in place whatsoever to make sure that these artists are actually, like, coping with, either a struggle for success or conversely too much success? And, as suddenly people are starting, this sheen has sort of, this veil has been lifted from, what people perceive to be this incredibly spectacular rock star lifestyle, and suddenly it's like, well, hang on a second, is this actually, are people actually doing okay, and I mean, the number one reason that this has even happened in the first place is the advent of social media. The music world completely got sucked into the vortex of social media, and social media became the platform upon which everything was built. You as an artist, your home on your online presence, your public presence, your marketing for your events, your communication with your fans, everything became sucked into social media. And social media had this weird way of being very welcoming at first, but then after a little while, it was like the engineering of the systems changed to make everybody feel like they weren't being paid attention to anymore, and that they needed something was missing, and that they needed to do something in order to make themselves feel included again. And so I think that's finally something that we're coming to terms with. And I don't think it's really anybody's fault. I think it was just, the whole world has changed dramatically in the last 15 years. Music has changed, it was only 15 years ago that everything was being released on a vinyl record, spinning on a turntable, which seems kind of crazy nowadays when this analog dance music, So yeah, I think, a lot of people like me, I know, have been searching for some way to make all of this okay. And, the truth is that, like, under the hood, a music career is very difficult, and it's a gamble. Yeah. And a lot of people, sort of have certain expectations of what they're going to get out of it, and they get very crestfallen and very set back when they don't get that. So I think the biggest thing that's changed for me is that I have this wonderful release from that attachment to this music stuff having to work now, you know? And once you can start looking at it with that frame of mind, everything becomes like a joyful bonus. And, obviously, anyone who's been in this industry as long as you and I have, at some point something has gone horrendously wrong with, like, the administrative side of things. Somebody hasn't done their job properly. Somebody's broken the rules. It can get sort of very ugly. So the way that I look at it now is that I'm here to be this conduit. I have this connection to this certain place that I can bring music from. And I want to stand in the way of that as little as possible. So the music isn't about me anymore. I think that's probably what's changed. It's about everybody else. And and so I think from this point on, I'm always going to be working to clean house and make sure that all the systems that make this wonderful music happen are actually working properly. And not just for me, but for everybody else as well. And so that's what I want most of all for my music nowadays is to help this world operate more smoothly, so that people can just get back down to business of making the records and and being fabulous, because that's what it used to be all about. I think we've come from this era in, like, the 70s or the 80s of, like, you write a hit record and it sets you up for the rest of your life. It gets played on the radio forever, and you never have to think about anything again. You
can be a one-hit wonder,
which is great. But I mean, we shouldn't be living aspiring to be only that, or we shouldn't need that to sustain ourselves. And I think the last couple of years, Patreon has been great. Even this month, Patreon are doing a huge push for all of their creators. to, you know, get their fans more excited. And it's basically, you know, that was something my label business partner and I started about 2.5 years ago, and we created this online fan club for my mix show podcast, something that we never would have thought would have taken off. But now we have, like, you know, a bunch of fans who every month are part of this sort of, like, you know, they tip a few bucks for the content they love and get some fun extras in return, you know, and it's just, you know, new systems like this are allowing people, you know, we're using the technology to monetize what we're doing and mobilize our fan bases at the same time, so that it's not just us versus the world anymore.
Right. Yeah. And when I love what you do on Patreon. I like that you give sometimes you have the Ableton sessions, or you have that. So I think you're doing a really great job with that. And if you guys don't know what that is, I'll link that up as well, because it is really awesome. When you think of in terms of obstacles, like what you just shared, what is one of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome in terms of, not necessarily in the business, but emotionally side of things, you know, like that being on the road a lot? How did you learn how to kind of deal with that? Because I know with my own burnout, and I really hit rock bottom pretty hard. And that's why my whole position now is to really take a stand for artists to find more balance in their world, you know? And so what was one of the hardest times for you, and how did you kind of shift that for you to get to the place that you're at now?
Probably the hardest thing for me was that I had, like, a crippling fear of flying my whole life.
Oh,
and
wow,
I
okay.
found myself in this line of work where I had to, like, face my worst fear, like, on an almost weekly basis for, like, a decade. And that was interesting. You know, I always knew that it was gonna, the further this went, the more I was gonna have to fly. And, you know, it just, every time I would go on tour, I'd be like, oh my God. And then I started like traveling in the US, and it was like, okay, now you need to fly, like, you know, dozens of times in the next few weeks. You know, like there was one tour where we were sort of flying 6 days a week. And so yeah, so the travel, I mean, for me, like when I go on tour, it's like, I think it's the same for anyone. Like the gig is loads of fun. Like what you're getting paid for really is the fact that you're traveling there, and you know, like the energy that you expend just doing that, and being in like late night hotel rooms by yourself and jet lagged, and you know, that's what really. But so you know, it was this constantly scary thing, and it was always a little bit overwhelming. You know, some of the first US tours I did was with just so many dates in such a short amount of time. It sort of threw me in the deep end. And you know, that was always really overwhelming. I mean, obviously, like I'm a much better flyer now than I used to be, because I'm so much more zen and chill than I used to be about everything. But also, I've just had so much exposure to it. But yeah, I would say something that actually really helped me. I love the Tim Ferriss podcast. I love talk show podcasts in general.
Yes.
And something one of his guests said, Derek Sivers from CD Baby, he said,
CD Baby, yeah.
you know, he was like, he said, if you go for a run and, you know, if you think too much about like all of the different aspects and elements of what you're doing, it's going to trip you up. You know, you don't want to think about like putting your shoes on and then putting the rest of your clothes on and then like going out for a run and doing this. And then, you know, like you just go and get it done. Just make it like one step, just go for a run. And, that has been actually hugely helpful thinking about things like that, especially because like last month I had 2 weekends where I was flying in like a triangle around North America. So I was starting in Seattle, and then there was like I was flying somewhere like, you know, in the southeast of the country, then back to the West Coast, then back up to Seattle. So I had 2 weekends like that, and it was like, oh my God, you know, this is gonna be a lot. But it was just a matter of just go and get it done, just go and do it. And in a weird way, it's much better to, you know, just sort of simplify those things in your mind and be like, okay, once I'm actually on the road, I'll know what to do. You know, I've done this many times before, and, you know, I know how to check into a hotel. I know how to get to the airport. I know what to do if like the flight screws up. I know what to do at the gig. You know, I know what to do if the sound craps out. I know what to do if I hit the wrong button on the CDJ. I'll figure it out. And so I think I have that trust in myself to just go and get it done, you know? And yeah, and in a weird way, that sort of empowers you to get on a plane and go to the other side of the world for a weekend and come back. And, you know, if you think about that too hard, about everything that goes into that, you know, and the technology that goes into that, you know, it can be a bit insane. But yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I used to have a really big fear of flying. So I was on a really crazy little small plane, and I swear that was it. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is actually it. And I was like grabbing the person next to me. I was petrified. And I think for like a year and a half, maybe even like two, even could have even been longer, I didn't take gigs that I had to fly to. I started driving. It paralyzed me that much.
Yeah.
And then I did some hypnotherapy and some EMDR. I did some work around it, and it totally was better. And now it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's a big fear, and I sometimes can catch myself in it at times as well. But then it's just like, I'm here. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There's nothing that I can do, and I have to trust that there's something greater guiding. So it is what it is, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it was I think the biggest thing that helped me was the realization that, well, actually, like you said, I had a flight from hell, and I mean that speaks volumes about like, you know, the boringness of flying, because like in the hundreds of flights that I've done, like that was the only like really 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 scary one, and you know,
Right.
even in that moment, you know, it was quite a long patch of scariness on this flight too. It was flying, I think, from Singapore to Sydney or something, and it was just about 3 hours of like, you know, sort of disaster scenario flight, which I'm sure like the pilots were up in the cockpit just being like, yeah, this is fine, this is nothing, you know. But for me, it was like, it was the end. This is, you know,
Right.
and it just went on for such a long time that I hit this point where I had no more fear to throw at the situation anymore, because I was just exhausted. I was like, you know, I had no idea it was going to go on for this long, and I just hit a point where I was like, okay, like I had this kind of weird epiphany of I think from that point onwards, everything was kind of okay, because I mean, it's never going to be that scary again, you know.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it was weird once I hit the limit of how scared I was of this thing. It started to disintegrate after that, and you know, the fact is, like, flying is the safest thing that you can do. It's the safest thing that you can do as a human being, and I think if you take a flight in the USA now, you have to fly every day for like 120,000 years before statistically something's going to happen to you. So there comes a point where you just have to let go of it and just be like, just do it. You know,
Just do it.
Don't stay home and, you know,
Yeah.
like get hit by a falling frying pan that falls off a shelf. You know, like just get out there and build your house on the side of Mount Vesuvius, as they say. You know.
Do it. So what made you want to move to Seattle? Tell us about that.
So Seattle's always been like a really special place for progressive house music, and yeah. So I've been sort of looking for like a new place to put down some roots for a time, because there has been a lot of moving around. Boston was really great. That was sort of my entry point into the USA. But yeah, it just sort of worked out this way. I've got a bunch of friends up here, and so I'm now like in the process of building a studio, which is this is actually day 2. So
Nice.
I'm sitting in here right now, and it's almost acoustically ready. It's like 90% there, and it's I've got this place for a year, so I'm basically just going to see how Seattle feels after a year, and then maybe go do something else. But the plan is basically just to smash it in the studio for the next year here, and you know, have loads of fun in the Pacific Northwest, and hopefully fly Alaska Airlines everywhere, because they've been great, and yeah, just have a good time basically.
Nice. And I know that you had said that you were looking into doing gaming music, right?
Yeah, so that's sort of bubbling away at the moment. So I've been doing well, another limitation, back to what you said before, that I kept coming up against was my own sound, and getting records to sound right in clubs, getting records to sound right on huge systems, and that's something that I was tearing my hair out over for years back in the day, and as a result, I kind of became a mixing and mastering engineer. Like, it was never that was never supposed to happen. It was just like, okay, I have done the hard yards here, like losing my mind over getting mixes to sound right. So eventually I hit the point where it was like, okay, well, if anybody else, you know, needs this service, like, you know, I've aged 10 years like faster than I probably should have, you know, like getting to this point of obsessing over audio. And now it's something I don't really think so much about anymore. And so, Yeah,
which is good to know that you're doing that, because your sound, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that, because I have my mix engineer for things, but as I start to write different, more melodic and progressive music, for me, it's like knowing that you now offer that as a service is like, well, man, that's like a no-brainer then, because you've mastered that big melodic sound. So that's awesome that you are going to start doing that. Yay.
Yeah, and so
selfishly, I'm really happy about that.
Well, I love it. Like I just it's something that actually is really therapeutic for me in a weird way. Is this bringing order to chaos? And I think when people come to me, like, they're like, I've got this project and I've listened to it like 2,000 times,
right?
And I can't see the way out of the woods anymore. And so I mean that's something that's I ended up becoming like a sort of main like part of my life, of my sort of working life. And and so I'm at this point in my life of connecting all the dots, and video games and the video game industry are like a huge passion of mine. And I grew up with video games. If you could
score any video game, what's your favorite? What would you love to have some of your music on?
Well, I think the Mass Effect series, they're my favorite games of all time, and they have this great sort of like retro synthesizer, futuristic space soundtrack, and I love sort of ambient space music, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the kind of thing I would love to do. But I think also what I love about sort of doing production music, is and game music and stuff like that, is that it's telling a story that isn't about you, which I think is really fun as well. It's not about you. It's about like whatever the consumer is looking at, or whatever they're experiencing, and amplifying that. And I think that's something that's really exciting. So it's definitely something I'm gonna look into more over the next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, because like I have stuff that's been like on TV or film, but I never know the scenes. It's stuff that I just have like in a catalog, right? That this person like shops for it, right?
Yeah.
In video games, is it similar to that, or would you get a shot of, the scene of it? Do they send you images, or
it's both?
How does that work? It's both.
Yeah. So, I know a lot of indie studios use like the sort of production music libraries and stuff like that. But it really is all about who you know. That's, and it's ultimately, it depends on what sort of project you're doing as well. So, but yeah, I think some of the bigger studios, it's sort of like movies where they sort of employ certain artists to do a particular kind of soundtrack for a particular kind of game,
Right. Yeah. Which would be so cool.
Yeah.
So do you like to kind of geek out in mixing and mastering more in other people's projects than your own?
I think with other people's projects, it's always easier, because you're sort of taking the essence of what they're going for. You're looking at what they're trying to say, and you're sort of fleshing that out, and you're sort of giving them a helping hand, sort of exalting and amplifying the good qualities of their music. And that's definitely something that's easier to apply to somebody else's creative process, because they have different blind spots from you. So say with my own music, I have like a little group WhatsApp type situation with about maybe like a dozen of my friends back in Australia who have been involved in the Jaytech project in one way or another since day one, since I was like 17 years old, and they follow absolutely everything that I do. And I always get them to listen to my music and tell me if it sucks, or tell me what resonates with them. And I'm always surprised at like which of the tracks they like more than others, because it's never what I would have expected. So I think there is really something to be said for blind spots, and you can't always see yourself so clearly, and you have to sort of take your ego out of the music a little bit. So yeah, I think peering into somebody else's project, it's usually pretty clear what needs to be done. It's usually a pretty straightforward process. It's almost never done in one take. I always send it to people, and I'm like, if there's something that you wanted to bring out more, or there's always something that the artist was like a bit more attached to than I personally am. And if they want that brought out, then that's totally cool, because there are really no wrong answers with this kind of stuff. Yeah. with my own music, I tend to sort of just chip away at things as I go. It's a case of continuous improvement. I come back to the project, I just listen for the first thing that sucks about it, that needs to be fixed, and I fix it. And I keep doing that until it's time to send it out, you know?
And do you then mix in the session itself, or do you bounce to stems and then mix the stems?
If it's my own track, I'll mix in the session itself. For
in the
sure.
session.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in just taking wherever it's at right now and just improving on that. It can be very hard to reinvent your mix from the ground up with your own track, because so much of the original magic is in that first demo. And to get that cleanliness of sound, to get that professional polish, you always have to sacrifice a little bit of that magic. You always, you know, so you have to walk a very delicate line. And if you remove all of your processing and remove everything and start from square one, it'll never sound quite the same. So
Right.
I'm a big believer in just take the best version that you've got right now, and then just what's the next step to get it to where it needs to be, you know?
In your creative process, so like when you go to write a song, say Aftershock, or probably one of my favorite tracks from 2017. I'm going to butcher it wrong. How do you say it? Is it Ricane? What's the music? That damn song. How do you say the name?
Oh, it's amazing how many people don't know this. It's Rocinante, and it's the
Rocinante. Oh my God,
it's the spaceship in The Expanse, the books in the TV series.
Yeah, I have no idea. But that song, literally, there's not a set that goes by that does not get played. It's amazing in production. And so when you go in to write something, do you have an intention of what you're going to write, or are you just free flow and just let what comes to you?
Once again, it's a bit of a mix of both.
Both.
Yeah. So there is a forthcoming Trance collaboration, which I can't say too much about right now, but it involves me and a number of other artists that people who are into my music will know.
Okay.
And so for that track in particular, like I've just done a sketch of the musical essence. I've sort of dreamed it up before even putting pen to paper. And I've written that musical essence, and now I'm sending it to the others to work on. So that is actually a really good way to write a track, because it means you've got a good vision for it right at the start. For my forthcoming album, it's much more erratic and just writing whatever feels right at the
Feels
time.
good.
You know.
Yeah.
And then once again, so I've got a bit of a listening party for this almost 30 track album demo that I have, that we're going to have to whittle down to like 12 or 13 tracks in the end. And so, yeah, my friends are all listening to it at the moment, and helping me go through it, you know?
Wow, that's amazing. It's good that you have that kind of support.
Yeah,
I love that you asked, does this suck? It's amazing what we think sucks and what somebody else thinks is amazing, and vice versa, right? It's like, I've had things that I absolutely hate that my friends love, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh, so there's this one album demo track, and it's got this like coconut clap. That's what all my friends have called it. And it's like at the end of every two bars, there's like this coconutty sounding clap sound. And everyone was like, "Oh, this track is great, but get rid of that damn coconut clap. It sounds awful." I was like, "Oh yeah, it kind of does." I had never thought about that, you know?
Right.
So yeah, you do, I definitely believe in not going it alone, and, you know, having some people to check you and make sure that you are sounding good and that you haven't missed anything glaring like a coconut clap, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's like, I gotta have more coconut claps. So if you have a bad day, you're feeling low and uninspired, do you take to music, or do you walk away from the music? What do you do?
It's pretty holistic nowadays, I have to say. So I've definitely stopped kind of struggling against a project. It's very rare that I'm sort of sitting in a studio being like, oh, I have to get this finished, but how am I going to solve this thing? You know, I'm much more likely to just come in and, you know, do whatever I can to make it, you know, a positive impact on it. And it might not even be that much. And so for this album demo, that's kind of how I've been collectively working on the projects. And it's so weird because it goes against the logic of so many other things in life where people are like, do one thing at a time and complete that one thing and then move on to the next thing. You know, for me, it's actually quite different from that. You know, like with mixed projects, I always want to do a handful at a time
Yeah.
And with my own tracks as well, it's like I'm always working on more music than I need because I am going to be narrowing it down. And so whenever I'm working on something, I'm usually working on it for as long as it's fun. And then, you know, it's weird because that also requires some discipline to make sure that you get music finished. And there was a long time there where I was not getting anything finished. But by working on things in sort of like small batches that are digestible amounts of work, I can sort of jump back and forth between things and keep it fun and fresh. Because when you go in 4-bar loop land for too long, you know, that's when you start to make errors in judgment and you start to lose focus.
Yeah. But wait, it's only been an hour and a half and I haven't found the perfect hi-hat yet.
Yeah.
It happens. Where do you find that you're the most happiest?
I think in the studio, honestly. I love going on tour, don't get me wrong. But as we sort of talked about before, it is something that requires a lot of energy from me. And it's something that it comes at a price, you know. It's not this completely fun experience all the time, you know. And sometimes it really is. Like if you have like a gig in a city where you've got like a bunch of friends hanging out and everyone's having a party and they've got an Airbnb for the weekend and, you know, like that's great, you know, it's really fun. But then, you know, it's like I spent my 30th birthday like flying to China for a weekend, and my actual birthday I was sort of on a plane back from China, and it was such a cool trip, but it was also like, this is insane. Like, you know, this is just like, it's not always such a super fun experience. And so, yeah, I think when I did change the paradigm of, you know, I want this to be fun. I want, you know, it needs to be fun for me as well, because that's ultimately going to give everyone else the best product as well. If, you know, if what I'm creating comes from a place of fun and a place of love and not tearing my hair out over stuff. So, yeah, I love being in the studio. You know, I've got a great sort of, the y-axis of my studio is the speakers and you know and acoustic treatment and all that kind of stuff, and the x-axis is video games. So I've got like a big TV in here and, you know, a Nintendo Switch, and so I've got this great sort of place that I can retreat from the world, but at the same time I'm so connected to the world because I'm doing stuff like this and I'm making something that I'm going to share with the world and take on tour. So yeah, I am definitely enjoying being back in the studio more, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Would you say that you have some sort of spiritual practice?
Definitely, yeah. So, and yeah, it's sort of, I mean, it's nothing particularly surprising in this day and age, being like a millennial, you know, a modern sort of mindfulness, you know, that kind of, but I actually started doing yoga 10 years ago. So I've been doing yoga, meditation, that kind of stuff for 10 years. And so, yeah, that's probably been a big part of this whole journey, is the fact that, yeah, I think that helped me, you know, be more in sync with life and not let life pass me by. You know, I think when I was younger, like some of these crazy experiences were so cool, but they were also coming at me so fast that I barely noticed them, you know. So, yeah, I think, yeah, being in this very peaceful place that I'm in now, you know, I feel in a much better position to actually really enjoy everything that's happening. Not to mention, you know, sort of letting go of any judgment of this world that we're in, and, you know, like what it's supposed to be, and what, you know, any like judgment of other artists or what they're doing or anything like that, or you know, or if, you know, even like on the administrative side of things, I think, you know, sort of conducting my career in a way that I know that things are gonna blow up sometimes. You know, sometimes I'm gonna have to blow up at somebody because they've screwed something up, or, you know, it's just it's a natural part of dealing with so many different human beings. You know, but this place that I'm at right now, it's yeah, I'm in a much better position to just be able to enjoy it because I'm much better at, you know, stepping away from it all now, and it doesn't define me. It's, you know, it's to me anyway, it's a huge part of who I am, but it's also something that I can walk away from and disconnect from. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. I mean, and you're in a beautiful place. You can hike, you can be outside, you can, that was me. I was in Miami in South Florida for 10 years and then Fort Lauderdale. And then I felt like I needed this calling to nature, you know, so I came to Colorado, and I've been here now 8 years, and just when I'm stressed, like in the studio, or if I need a minute, it's just being able to be outside and seeing the vastness of our planet has just been so incredibly inspiring for me and grounding and helpful for me as well. And you have that out in Seattle as well. You've got some great hikes and trees. You've got nice trees.
Yeah. And at the moment, actually very nice sunny weather, which has been awesome.
Awesome.
But yeah, I've also been lucky enough to go to a lot of the national parks this year around the US, and it really is just, it's an incredible place. And, you know, I think I often wonder like what the rest of the world must be sort of feeling right now, like from the outside looking into the USA, like what is it like to be here? And the fact is to this day, it is still just an incredible place. It's the pinnacle of human civilization, and it's a natural treasure as well, you know? And I don't think anything's ever going to really change that.
Yeah. Do you have any desire to go and do like Burning Man or?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Go out in the desert for.
I've never done that.
I've never gone either. It's I want to go for so many reasons, and I know myself with sand.
Yeah.
So I have to get past that.
You definitely do have to sort of just like immerse yourself in the grubbiness of it right at the start, you know. Although it sounds like people now are sort of doing this sort of glamping type situation. Yeah, I would love to go for sure. I think the closest thing to that I've been to was this crazy summit thing in Utah, and it was like this 3-day meeting of entrepreneurial types and all this kind of thing.
Oh, Summit at Sea? The Summit people.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
I've gone on their ships. I've gone on the Summit at Sea. I love them.
Yeah, so I went. It was like on this mountain in Utah that they've bought, and as you do, and it was just, and they were like, okay, we want you to like DJ in this electric forest, and Artie was playing as well, and so they were like, and you can just come to this summit for 3 days, and while all of the attendees were like staying in tents on top of the mountain, they drove us back down the mountain every night and put us in like this nice little lodge. But it was just 3 days of just like really cool talks and, you know, like just really inspiring people and stuff in this incredibly beautiful locale. And I love things like that. You know, I love when people, you know, all these creative minds come together and make something really wonderful like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I went on their first, one of their, I guess a couple of years ago, one of the ones that they did at sea on the ship. And it was still to this day, I actually I'm still wearing it. You can see it. I'm still wearing the leather band from it. It was so inspiring. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's so cool that you got to go to Powder Mountain. I've been wanting to get up there to do one of those events and see those too. So awesome.
Yeah.
So question, if you could give any advice to your younger Jimbo, what would it be?
Honestly, I think it would be keep meticulous records of everything and make plans and have structure, because, you know, for so long I was just kind of like winging it and you know, fumbling my way through this musical career, and you know, and kind of always hoping for the best but never really having a plan for the worst. And
right.
Yeah, I think that's what's really changed now is you know, like having good habits and having a structure to how you do everything is really important. And I wish that's something that I had sort of figured out sooner, you know, is just is to have really, like, you know, cross your T's and dot your I's, and, you know, make sure everything is done 100% correctly, because it's so important. And that comes down to, like, you know, and maybe this is something I've learned from mixing and mastering as well, is, you know, even like when working on a project, like, you know, if you're like chipping away at a bass line, if you're working on the bass of your track, like get it correct, and then move, you know. So maybe that is one area where it's like do one thing at a time. But it was amazing how much I just wasn't doing properly, and even to this day, I'm still discovering systems in this, you know. So yeah, I think in a more concise way, I would say to my younger self, like, create a mind map of everything that exists in your world, whether it be like, you know, map out this whole business, this whole musical enterprise, you know, everything that all of the different tasks and projects and possibilities and everything, like put it all down in a place that you come back to again and again and constantly improve it and always make it better. And that should be at the center of everything that you do. And that's the way forward, I think.
Yeah, I love that. You're preaching. Amen. When it's all said and done, what do you want Jimbo? Who do you want Jimbo to be remembered as?
I honestly think at the end of the day, it's going to be the guy who made Pepe's Garden. You know, I don't think I'm ever going to escape that.
Good track.
No, but I think I want to be remembered as somebody who came into this world and reminded everybody to be positively charged and to clean the world up and make it a better place than it was when they arrived in it.
I love that. That's amazing. So I appreciate you sitting and talking to me. What do you have coming up? I will link all of this stuff in the show notes because I want people to, for your mixing, mastering, the studio, Positronic. What's coming out on Positronic? Do you want to say some things about that?
Yeah, so Positronic is back online, and we've got another release coming out in about 4 weeks from yours truly called Audio Virus. You heard it here first.
Nice.
There is, once again, this super, super secret collaboration that I can't talk too much about. There's going to be a super secret tour happening around that super secret collaboration, or in fact, I think it actually happened the other way around.
Okay.
So that's going to be the last quarter of this year, and it's going to be awesome. So keep an eye out for that, USA.
Nice.
Apart from that, I'm just going to go back to Australia at the end of the year and do another tour there, spend Christmas there, which is going to be great. And but as for this month, it's going to be studio lockdown here, finishing this album because it's like 90% done.
Nice.
And then who knows after that? We'll have to see. So yeah, that's what's going on here.
All right, good. And people, I'll link up his podcasts as well and in the Patreon for you guys to listen as well. This has been so fun. I really appreciate you talking to me and taking some time. I know you've been busy, and I can't wait to hear what you're working on. And I'm just really appreciative. Thank you so much.
Hey, me too. I always love the opportunity to ramble into a microphone about what I think and feel. So I'm very much appreciative of that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll have you on again. I want to know more about the secret. So
hell yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jimbo. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Alyson.
Okay, bye.
So that's it for this episode. I hope you found something inspiring with my conversation with Jimbo. If you did, head over to the Remix Your World Insiders Facebook group and let us know. If you want to find out more information on Jaytech, I'm going to link up all of his information in the show notes. That way you can go and listen to his amazing podcasts, follow him on Beatport, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, however you get your listening pleasure. I will link up all of his information in the show notes. If you'd like to find out more information about me, Remix Your World, and the courses that I teach, head over to remixyourworld.com, and you could download some free meditations for those of you who are teetering on the idea of meditation, or if you're looking to just remix your meditations. There's something that I produce there called the Mindful Mixtape. I'd be happy to send it to you. You could text the words meditate now, all one word, to 44222. That's meditate now to 44222. And I'll send that straight to your inbox. I look forward to spending some time with you in the future. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.